There we go.
Okay, so hello and thank you for joining us today. My name is Rico. I'm a Young Carers Outreach and Development Worker for GADM, and a massive welcome to everyone that's watching our webinar. It's called the In Conversation with Carers webinar, and I'm joined by three amazing guest carers from our Salford and Manchester Carers services who have volunteered their time today to have a conversation with each other about some of the topics that we'll be discussing. We were meant to have four carers, but sadly, one of our adult carers from Salford was unable to make it today. So, the main topics of conversation and chat today will be centered around Carers Week, which is this week between the 7th and the 13th of June, and the theme of Carers Week, which is making carers visible and valued. So, I'll be asking our carers what it means for them to be visible and valued, their experiences, and what messages they'd like to give out to their fellow carers and to you, the audience who's watching at home or wherever you may be watching. So please do get comfortable, and we hope you enjoy today's webinar. And of course, if you want more information about the care services that we provide at GADM, as well as advocacy and therapy services that we provide at GADM, then you can do so by visiting our website, www.gadm.org.uk. And there's also contact details on there if you do want to get in touch. So over to the carers. Carers, I'll be asking you to introduce yourselves, where you're from, who you're caring for, how long you've been caring for that person or people, and when was the moment that you realized that you were caring for someone and that you had a caring role. So who wants to go first? Maisie, over to you.
Yeah, my name is Maisie, and I come from Salford, and I've been caring for my mum ever since she started being ill. So, yeah, life has been a bit hard, but still, I've managed to cope, and I've always helped my mum.
And when did you realize you were a young carer?
Well, I only realized when I first got the message, I was a bit shocked because it was like a surprise to me.
Yeah. Okay. And thank you for that. And who wants to go next? Who wants to
I'll
introduce
go.
themselves?
Oh, Blaine. You go, Blaine.
Don't blame.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah, I'm a young carer from Salford, and I've been young caring for my mum, and I've been caring for it's ever since the illness started, and I first realised when I was young carer. It was about last year, the start of lockdown, and that's when I got introduced to GADM.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And Aki?
Well, I care for my wife, and I realised I was a carer in 2016, and it just hit me one day that I now needed to step up and run the household and do more of what needed doing.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for sharing those experiences and when you became carers. So, as mentioned just a minute ago, this year and this theme for Carers Week is centered around being visible and valued. And carers will have a different definition of what it means to them being visible and valued. So, I guess it's a kind of a bit of an open question, but it's open to discussion. What does being visible and valued mean to you personally? So who wants to take that question on?
Well, I myself am somewhat ambivalent about the visibility thing. Obviously, I would wish for the state and its institutions to recognise my situation and what need as of all carers and what needs to be done for carers and so on and so forth. But I wouldn't really want to be recognised in the street as a carer. I mean, some, as they say, not all disabilities are visible, and that is a good thing in one sense, in that you can maintain the dignity of the person you care for once you're out in public. We don't want our personal business to be known by all, but clearly visibility is important in terms of resources and so on.
And have you ever encountered situations where you felt it was important for you to be visible and valued, but you didn't get that recognition, or you wasn't appreciated for your caring responsibilities? Was there any situations where you've encountered that?
daily from my wife. you know, but I cannot say I've encountered that at a state level. I'm very interested to hear about the experiences of Blaine and Maisie, because they care for people who are bigger than them. They usually, it's a reverse relationship. Parents care for children, not the reverse. Whereas married people, you kind of equals. You don't have any questions with problems of authority. So like I deal with the utilities, so on and so forth, with the council, whatever government body needs to be dealt with. When it comes to moving, I can physically, I could lift and carry my partner from room to room, my wife if need be. I would imagine Maisie couldn't carry her mother. So I'd really like to know about those experiences.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Go on, Blaine.
So being visible and values mean to me that that we need to be seen, we need to be heard as young carers, and experiences like I mentioned loads of times, it's hard. It's hard on the mental side and it's hard on the physical side, and it's constant pressure. I mean, looking at being an adult carer, I wouldn't see that as a harder job than being a young carer, but I would see some of the similarities in being a young carer as well. So yeah.
And have you felt in your experiences that you've been appreciated for being a young carer, and that you've been made visible of being a young carer? Maybe some of the kind of social action and volunteering that you do at GADM to get your message across. How do you feel about sharing some of those, and maybe situations where you didn't feel like you were valued and visible by people in society?
I mean, being valued and visible is just not something that young carers get that much. And, helping GADM out to get that message across really helps, because I know that I'm helping other young carers that I'm not seen. But yeah, I don't think that we're visible enough as young carers. And there's stuff that needs to be done. Like we could have a young carers fund, because I know adults carers get that. So we could have a fund set up. And that's where we could get more help in school, like breakout areas where we can have just a bit of silence to read, and areas where, we can get taken out of lesson to get spoken to ask how we are, because we don't get asked that. We don't get asked in school how we are or how we're doing. And Maisie will back me up on this. Also, having a disability as well, like myself, is harder on young carers as well. And Maisie, yeah, my question to Maisie is like, obviously knowing that you've also got complications, is that harder on you as a young carer?
Well, if I'm honest, it's kind of like hard, because like we are trying to get support at the moment. And like we need mental help for young carers and their families as well. It's kind of like, because it's much of a struggle, like not getting much help.
Yeah.
Mm.
And my recent studies have shown that we're not high in the priority list in any major parliament or council in areas like Blackpool, Salford, Lancashire. We're not on the priority list. We're not in the top 5 priority. We're as low as it can be, and that's because we're not visible.
It's interesting you should say that, Blaine. The bottom line is, if you don't vote, you don't count. And if you're too young to vote, nobody's interested in catering for you. So, yeah, you have to shout even louder.
And Aki, Blaine kind of eloquently put his opinions across on kind of not being visible and valued as a young carer. Based off what he said, do you think there's any similarities to what you face as an adult carer with being visible?
No, I would say the situation's as different as chalk and cheese. I mean, as an adult, you tend to have more means as an adult, more financial means. The richest person in the world is an adult, it's not a child or a young person. So you tend to have more means, you have a certain gravitas, you're used to dealing with, the utilities people, the council, so on and so forth. There's no credibility problem. Physically, you're at your peak, your prime. You physically pick up people, so on and so forth. It must be very different. I mean, making phone calls on behalf of the person you care for. Would you ever do that, Maisie?
Mm.
Have you ever made a phone call on behalf of the person you care for?
Well, once when like it's kind of like my mum asked me just in case she faints in shock to call 999 because because I can be really worried about that as well. It's just kind of like so the fact that my mum's been in hospital a lot, it's just kind of like worrying.
And Maisie, do you want to share your experience of being visible and valued, what it means to you, and whether you've been in situations?
I have a feeling that we should be visible to people because like we all struggle. All of us struggle here. It's kind of like Wade said, some of us have disabilities. So it's kind of like, although you don't really see them, we do have them. So like some people, they don't really know who we are. So it's kind of like important to like bring the message.
Yeah. And I think what I find quite interesting, and just from this discussion, is that even though young carers and adult carers might face different kind of care responsibilities, actually for young adult carers, they actually do share some of the responsibilities that adult carers do. But the fact is that young carers are younger, they are not adults, and they're taking on a responsibility like an adult to provide care. So in many ways, you may think that being a young adult carer is more difficult because you're doing, this care responsibilities that adults would do. But in reality, it's difficult for adult and young carers to do providing care responsibilities because it does take time out of your day, and it does, have an impact in some way on your life. And I guess my next question is, how has it had an impact on your day-to-day life, being a young carer and being an adult carer? So who would like to answer that first?
Go on, Maisie.
Maisie?
Well, I have a feeling that like it's kind of like I said before, like we would need help, and like it's a struggle in daily life for us because we need help.
Yeah, and of course you go to school as well. So how's it? Is it difficult for you going to school and having a care responsibility, and how have you managed to deal with that?
Not all the time. It's just kind of like sometimes with like when I'm in school and I struggle, it's just kind of like struggling with certain subjects, and I struggle to write. I can't really write more than 2 minutes. So
yeah. And thinking about the future, are you possibly nervous about going to? Are you going to high school, or are you in high school?
I'm going to go to high school, but I'm really nervous about that.
And why are you nervous?
Because I'm not sure, if I'll get bullied or not. It's just kind of like the fear of you getting bullied.
Is that the fear of being a young carer and being bullied for being a young carer?
Well, sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just kind of like for the fear of like starting a new school, and it's just kind of like I'm afraid that someone will bully me.
Yeah. And Blaine, have you experienced that before? Being upset by moving schools, or being in secondary school and experiencing that type of
because
bullying?
I found out with young care when I was in high school, which is strange. And the fact is, why I found out then is because I didn't know what a young carer was, because it never got taught to me in schools. And I think that's another thing that I put across, is that schools should teach more people about young carers, because I didn't know what a young carer was,
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and nothing's changed for me. My life hasn't changed for me, but I know other people that may not go to school because they're scared, or they're worried, or they feel frightened, and that's the kind of thing that I try and fight for.
Yeah. And Aki, hearing from our young carers about their experiences of being in school, is it kind of similar in a workplace for an adult carer? Have you ever experienced something like that?
My life has changed completely, in that my days are much more structured. I'm the person that makes things happen, so I've got to be on my game. I have to struggle with a lot of sleep deprivation. But on the plus side, I'm learning skills that I wouldn't necessarily have learnt and I'm becoming a new and better person for the experience I'm having. Every downside has an upside, and the reverse, of course, is that every upside has a downside. So we must do what needs to be done.
And you just touched on skills there. You feel like you've gained some skills as an adult carer. Do you want to touch on what kind of skills you've gained? And maybe some of these young carers may have some of those skills as well.
Well, yes, of course, I'm sure they do. I mean, I'm kind of cooking more, thinking about things, making sure the washing machine, having to deal with all sorts of people in relation to all sorts of consumer matters, buying goods, having to deal with faulty goods. So, there is no problem that falls outside my remit.
And to our young carers, do you resonate from Aki's skills? Do you feel like you have some of those skills, or do you want to discuss some of the skills, or the skills that you may have that you've gained as a young carer, and maybe talk about some of the skills that you're going to take with you if you do have to become an adult carer in the future?
Well, the skills that I've gained is kind of like more knowledge and kind of like more like artistic skills. I'm soon, hopefully I'm soon going to cook, but I know I'm going to have that skill nailed soon because we have cooking technology in high school. So
I'm sure you're looking forward to that, aren't you? Getting to cook food and learn some more skills in that department. Blaine?
Yeah, so I learned a lot about like the cooking and cleaning and stuff like that. It's very like same stuff that an adult carer would do, to be fair. But then there's also the downsides of the chores that you do, like pharmacists and getting medication, stuff like that is really hard because we can't do that. And doing all the stuff that an adult can do, we can't do because we're young. Like getting prescriptions, we can't do that, and it's hard.
And do you feel like maybe in the future, do you feel like your caring role will change, and especially when you become an adult carer, if you do become an adult carer, so when you turn 18 and older, do you feel like your caring situation will change? And if so, how will it change? And will it make it easier to do some of your caring role responsibilities? Because just as you mentioned, with things like, go to the chemist, GP, hospital appointments, when you're 17, be able to learn how to drive, all these new skills that become available to you. Do you think that will play a part when you are older, if you do become an adult carer?
Yeah, massively. It'll help massively, and it will relieve some of that kind of pressure that you put under, and it will relieve it because you can do everything then because you're an adult. You're more visible, you're more valid, you get more funding, you get more finance, you get more, you can go to a GP hospital appointment and get prescriptions, you can do everything. And that's the kind of thing. But whilst you're young, you can't do that. So you're kind of more pressure of helping someone than you are when you're an adult carer.
And Maisie, how do you feel about that?
Well, if I'm honest, I do want to become an adult carer, but like Blaine said, like it's kind of like going to like pharmacy and collecting your medicine. Like it's just kind of like all the hospital appointments. It's just kind of like a bit stressful on your schedule. Like, for example, if you had something like some work to do, but you have a hospital appointment at the same exact time your work starts, it'll be a bit stressful.
Yeah, and there may be some benefits of, when you do become 18 and older, that you'll be able to do some of the things that you did mention. But Aki, how do you feel about kind of sharing your experiences or talking about the kind of support that is available, not just in Salford and Manchester, but in general, when you're an adult, because you're an adult carer, sorry, but like when they turn 18 years old, what do you think the support will look like for them? And will it actually be enough support for them to manage their caring role, especially now that when they do turn 18, they'll have to go into education, possibly into employment? How do you think that will look for them and in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, financially, I think the biggest change might be that there'll be, I don't know if carers allowance is available to young carers. Probably not. So
16 over. Again, these things change sometimes quite often, so it might depend when they turn 18 or 16.
But it is a pittance compared to the fact that most people, if they weren't carers, would be out, earning money, being productive in society. Clearly, this is one of the areas where, I mean, unpaid work in general, we know is undervalued. It's as if you're not being paid for it, it's not meaningful, things will change for them and things will become easier. And there's a lot of help in terms of the resources out there, almost too much help. This is my personal feeling. My approach was just to get on with it, take it by a day-by-day basis, and learn on the job, because basically you've got to mold yourself around the person you're caring for, their needs, their requirements. So it's not just a textbook, here's the situation, these are the answers. There are very specific answers, and I spend my time. So, for example, I have to dress my wife, and I spend my time thinking how the best way to do this is, which sock goes on first, which trouser leg goes on first, which shoe goes on first, in what order these things need to be done. Morning wake up routines, planning things, and thinking about
go on, sorry.
About the details, about the details. The details are important.
Yeah. And when we look at the current landscape of support, you said, in your personal opinion, you feel like there's quite a lot of support out there for adult carers. Do you think there is maybe a gap that's missing, that's not being addressed for carers? And maybe for young carers, you may feel there's a gap of support for young carers. But in your experience, Aki, do you feel there's a gap of support in general in society that carers don't have access to, or there's not enough support in that area?
I couldn't comment on the situation for young carers because I'm ignorant simply of, the legislation and what resources are out there. For adults, there's everything you would want and more. One of my feelings was when I first become a carer, I didn't want to become ghettoized. I didn't want to, where everybody I knew was either a carer or being cared for. So that was an issue for me. So I've tended not to be over reliant, but people should certainly search out and accept the help they need. And indeed, I have done so.
And to our young carers then, do you feel like there's a gap or an area of support that's not being looked into, that's not got enough support in that area, that hasn't got enough focus and attention in that area? What might that be, and what would you want to see happen to plug that gap?
Well, I'd like for the young carers in the family to have more basically mental health, people to help us with our issues. For example, like I said last time, we may not look it, but we do have disabilities.
Yeah, and some disabilities aren't visible, and that kind of relates to carers being visible and valued. It's actually recognising that some carers and the people that they care for have hidden disabilities, and that may be an area of support that needs plugging in general from people who are able to provide mental health support to yourself or to whoever it might be who's caring for their loved one or for the loved one themselves. Blaine, do you feel like do you agree with that, or do you feel like there's other gaps of support that need filling in?
I agree with Maisie, and there's big gaps. These finance gaps. So carers allowance for young carers doesn't happen. We have the DigiFund that was set up by the Who Cares campaign, and that was set up, but that's only for technology purposes. Whereas we have a fund where if your parent has a low money week, or if they don't earn as much money because they're out of job, then the young carers can chip in that fund to help their family out. I think that's a big part that will really help young carers. And also in schools as well, there's a big gap as well. We need to learn about young carers more. We need to, have sessions where they can be taken out and spoken to and ask how they're doing, on behalf of their mental health. And there needs to be more acknowledgement in schools of young carers to relieve that pressure in schoolwork and homework.
Yeah.
And I think young carers just also need a quiet space to think as well. and the Gadam service also provides that.
Yeah, so like respite and recreation opportunities to like take some time out of your caring role to do something fun. I feel that's important. And Aki, do you get enough opportunities to do to provide respite for yourself and for your loved one, and do you take that up that offer up? Or?
Yeah, I mean, we access various Alzheimer's cafes. That's what my wife suffers from, Alzheimer's disease. So we access various Alzheimer's cafes here in town. But I'm a real homebody myself. So as long as I've got books at hand and an internet connection, I'm happy as can be. But obviously, it is a difficult situation we find ourselves in. But this is life, joy and sorrow, these things are entwined, we don't question the good things that happen to us. If we were walking down the street and we found a £50 note, we won't say, wow, why me? So why should we say, wow, why me, when something not so good happens? We must just take it on the chin and get on with doing the things that we need to be doing. But an important thing is we mustn't forget who we are. We're not just carers. We ourselves are individuals, and must be kind to ourselves and indulge ourselves and do the things we enjoy on a daily basis and not forget who we are.
Yeah. And I think, especially when we look at the COVID-19 pandemic and how it's had an impact on all of our lives, you kind of touched on the importance of looking after yourself. And I think that's important, not just for us carers, but to everyone out there who's been suffering with this pandemic in some way or another, because I'm sure, all of us have in some way or another. But kind of touching on carers and carers dealing with the pandemic, how's it been for all of you dealing with the pandemic individually, personally, and how's it been in terms of your caring role? So has your caring role changed in any way? Has it got better? Has it got worse? How do you think it will be after the pandemic? So those are open questions. Anyone can answer those.
It's hard. The pandemic's been hard. It's been hard for everyone. And I know for facts that there would have been thousands of undiagnosed carers through this pandemic, people who've had COVID and who suffer from long-term COVID, and who have had a deficiency on the lungs and stuff like that because of COVID, and now then young people have to step up, and it's been hard because now you have to wait in queues and stuff like that, and it's doubles that hardness. And especially whilst there's a virus going about and your parents have to shield, that doubles your work. And also the finance, I keep mentioning the finance, but it's going to happen. It gets harder in lockdown, not just for young carers, but also for adult carers. And this is why we need some form of finance for young carers, because whilst your parents are out of job, who's earning that money? Because young carers can't.
Yeah, and go on, Aki.
I was going to say my situation is somewhat anomalous to everybody else's, that COVID has been relatively kind to us. I mean, we live here in the town centre in Manchester. During the first lockdown, we'd not had such clean air in the centre of Manchester since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So, for 200 years, it took 200 years for us to breathe clean air, here in the town centre. It made me think about our processes. Living in a town centre, we used to shop for food daily, but now with the fact that we were risking our lives, we would shop. We still needed to leave the house for exercise, so it was every third or fourth day. And I lost a lot of weight, actually, which again is the reverse to many people's experience, simply because there was only so much I could lug home. So I would buy a fixed number of meals, and they would be eaten as they should be, because if I ate too much, it would mean we'd have to go out and risk our life all over again quicker than we needed to. There was the online shopping thing was available, but if we didn't leave the house for the shopping, we just wouldn't have left the house, basically. And for our mental health, it was important. So I've had an experience that it's the reverse of, because we know COVID has been terrible, the effect that it's had on those around us, and we can't, people have lost jobs, lost homes, people, in in bad relationships, you know, so on and so forth. It's magnified all the ills of society, but not here.
Yeah. And Maisie, how do you feel about the pandemic so far? And are you looking forward to when it ends? Because it seems like, and I don't want to jump the gun, but it seems like we're making quite a bit of progress with the vaccination program. That's been great. And it seems like we're starting slowly to get out of this pandemic. What are you looking forward to
Well,
when it ends?
I'm
And yeah,
looking
go on.
forward to kind of like just kind of like because like last year I couldn't like have a party same this year, so I'm just like looking forward to hopefully having a party next year or inviting some friends over to my house for
Yeah.
a while because it's been like a lot because I'm not being able to go to their houses or they've not been able to come to mine. So like and also like I said, it's been a bit of a struggle with COVID in place because it's kind of like because you do need fresh air, but it's the fear of catching COVID that stops you.
Yeah. And I mean, talk to me about your ideal kind of party then at your house. What were you looking forward to doing? So you're looking forward to being with your friends. What else are you looking forward to doing?
I'll be looking forward to like kind of like just spending that time quality time with my friends and having fun. It's just kind of like even though we do that at school, it's not for very long. You don't like get to see each other for long. You only get to see each other for a couple of hours or lots of like up to 6 or 7 hours, and then that's it. Like me and my friend have been trying to keep in touch a lot. Like I've got one friend that's moved. I got a friend, my other friend that I'm messaging. So it's a bit hard not being able to like see them or know how they're doing.
Yeah, and ultimately, you know, one day we'll get that opportunity to see our friends again, and some of us do. You know, the current guidelines allow for you know, 2 households to mix, but you know, hopefully in the future you can definitely have, and you will have that amazing party at your house, and I'm sure it'll be great. How's everyone looking forward to the pandemic ending when it does end, and how do you think it will affect your caring role again?
Well, I feel
No
like
one?
it's gonna be a lot better because it's just kind of like we get to all see each other instead of like using Zoom.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. Zoom is great. Zoom is great, but I think
Uh-huh.
you know I like the person to person kind of interaction. And how do you feel, Blaine and Aki? Do you feel like you missed that kind of interaction, and what are you looking forward to most?
I don't think it'll be much different for young carers' roles, but I don't know because it's still not relieving any pressure because the lockdown has just added pressure, and then once that added pressure was gone, we've still got that normal pressure that we used to have. So I don't think it would change young carers' roles and pressure, but I can't wait for human interaction. I mean, you know, joining Gadam services. I've only seen the Gadam services work over Zoom, so I think it will better I think it will be better once we get that face to face interaction.
Yep. And Aki, how do you feel about?
Well, obviously the chance to meet friends in person will be a great thing. There is a friend of ours who we used to have lunch with once a month. Always a great treat for us, and that obviously hasn't happened for a very long time now. But in some ways, you know, the more things change, the more they remain the same. There's when you first become a carer, there's a certain amount of social isolation because you've got to get on with the business of caring, and there's certain people on the periphery of one's life that just go by the wayside. But there was an upside to that. It meant when COVID actually came, we would be, because we've been so isolated that we kind of naturally protected ourselves from an ill that we didn't know was about to befall us. Though we used to use a facility in the town centre where on 2 consecutive winters I caught very heavy colds from people. So it was Christmas 2019, just before COVID hit. I decided that we wouldn't use that facility as much because it was flu season, and with my wife being so much older than myself, you know, we wouldn't wish to catch the flu. And it turned out to be a very good decision in the end because not only was the flu lurking in the background, COVID was. So yeah, I mean, some things will change, but some things will stay just the same. And some of the changes have been quite positive, so they will carry on regardless of COVID.
Yeah.
As in certain social changes that we're seeing widely, the use of cash, physical money, is been on the way out. That's been exacerbated. Hopefully, we'll see neckerchiefs and cravats coming back into fashion. Ladies wearing gloves. There'll be all sorts of changes, I'm sure.
And Maisie, Blaine, you took part in the Wear a Mask campaign, because I think, Aki, you kind of touching on it, things after the pandemic that we might have learned is things like wearing masks to protect others. Even if it's not against COVID, it might be, if you have a flu or if you have cold, you can protect others by wearing a mask. Do you want to explain how you felt doing the Wear a Mask campaign for us? And do you want to talk a little bit about it and why it's still important to wear a mask, even though restrictions are starting to ease? Maisie, do you want to start?
Well, it's important, even though the receiving is so important, like to wear a mask, guys. You don't know if they've had a cold or not, so it's just kind of like just to be safe, or for your safety, you also need to wear a mask.
Yeah. And Blaine, how do you feel about people to wear masks?
Doing the Wear the Mask campaign was an amazing way to show that people need to wear the mask, not only because this virus is going about, but also to protect the vulnerable people that we look after. Because if they get COVID, that's going to be worse on us, because we had to look after them more. And I think wearing the mask is important, because actually you're protecting your loved ones and you're protecting other people who you have to volunteer for and who you have to help out. And I think that's why it's important.
Yeah, and of course it's important to mention that some people are exempt from wearing a mask, and that's completely fine. And do you feel like it's important for those that are exempt to not face any kind of abuse or people maybe misunderstanding them for not wearing a mask? How do you feel about that? And what would be your message to people who may be not understanding of those who are exempt of wearing masks?
Yeah, people are exempt for a reason. I mean, the people are exempt because, they may have asthma, or they may have something wrong with them, like a disability or something.
Hidden disability sometimes.
And that may be hidden, and that's why it shouldn't be discriminated on. I know I see some people in school with an exempt lanyard, and I go, are you exempt? Why are you exempt? I question it, because some people can be that person because they don't like wearing a mask. So I had to question it. But yeah, it shouldn't be discriminated on if they can't wear a mask, because actually they're keeping themselves safe in a way.
We're keeping them safe, because those that can wear masks do wear masks, and those who are exempt are genuinely exempt. I think that's really important to emphasize. Aki, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to say I've erred on the side of safety. My wife is exempt from the rules, but my feeling was you may be exempt from the rules, but has anybody told COVID that? Just because you're exempt from the rules doesn't mean you're exempt from the disease. So I've always erred on the side of safety. And who needs to be getting into arguments with security guards about whether you've got a card and you don't need a card, whether this or that? That's been my feeling. Though, of course, I've recognised, that people, do have hidden disabilities, and I've just assumed if people are not wearing a mask, they've got a good reason for it. But sometimes, even I've looked awry at people and thought, really? You look the picture of health? Are you really that unwell that you don't need to wear a mask? So, yes, I mean, this is a big question. But primarily, we wear masks to protect ourselves, and they also protect others.
Yeah, perfect explanation. So we've not got much time left. So I'm going to ask one kind of general question, open question, and can answer it in any way that you feel. So if you had the opportunity to speak to all of the carers in Manchester and Salford across the UK, what would be your message to them about being visible and valued? And also a message to those who work with carers. What is your message about them, taking their time out to make sure that carers in general are being visible and valued? So, Maisie, would you like to go first?
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking like if they do become a teacher, they could teach like their class about young carers or like why we should be like seen as well as not like as well as like being cared of, because it's just kind of like I said earlier, we all have struggles, we all have disabilities, so it's just kind of and like also like Blaine said before, sometimes wearing a mask can be a struggle, because like it's just kind of like if you have asthma or like Blaine said, other disabilities.
Yep. And Blaine, Aki, what is your message to carers or to those who work with carers about making sure that they're being visible?
My message to carers is like, you're amazing. You're doing a good job. You keep it up. It's gonna be hard, but you're already there, so keep going. But also look after yourself, because yourself is important as well. Don't forget that you're actually important. And the message to like the overall community and the people who look after carers is help us. We're here. Help us. We ain't ghosts. We need help. We need support. And the message to carers is we're gonna fight. I'm gonna fight. We're gonna fight, and we're gonna get this message across.
And get your voices heard. Aki, do you want to end on something?
Well, my advice to all carers would be to guard your privacy and maintain your dignity. Guard the privacy and maintain the dignity of the person you care for. Make yourself known to those whose job it is to help you, and do not be afraid to seek the help you need.
Yeah, and that's the most important message, I think. It's important for all carers to be visible and valued, because they need to be appreciated for the amount of sacrifice that they make on a daily basis to look after their loved ones. Whether you're 5 years old, whether you're 65, 75, 85 years old and you're caring for someone, you all play a massive part in society. And some of you are hidden, and some of you, need that support. So do reach out, and we all need to do better as a society to help our carers and make sure that they are being supported. So I'd just like to say thank you to Aki, to Blaine, and to Maisie for talking with me and having a conversation with carers about about Carers Week, about the theme of being visible and valued. Your experiences is what everyone needs to hear, and I appreciate you taking the time out to talk about that today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maisie. Thank you, Blaine. So, so that's it from our live stream. I'd just like to say thank you to everyone that's been watching and taking the time out to watch our carers explain what it means for them to be visible and valued. And if you're looking for more information about GADM services in caring, in advocacy, and in therapy, then of course you can go to our website, www.gadm.org.uk, and there are contact details on there if you do want to get in touch. And thank you very much for watching.